Everybody is keeping score in some way. Money, success, status, recognition, what we own, what we've built, maybe even how far we've gotten. And none of those things are necessarily bad. In fact, a lot of them matter. But at some point, it's worth asking a harder question. Who decided what was the scoreboard? And maybe even more importantly, are you winning a game you actually wanted to play? We're going to talk about that in tonight's episode. Every game has some way of knowing whether you're winning. In sports, it's obvious. It's the scoreboard. You look up, you see who has more points, and that's that. In business, we've got revenue, profit, cash in the bank, growth, market share. Investing has returns. Social media has followers, views, and likes. We like scoreboards because a story that is told about where we started and how far we've come. The strange thing about life is that nobody ever hands you an official scorecard, though. You just sort of pick one up along the way. And maybe it came to you from your parents, your friends. Maybe it's the people you work around. Maybe it's where you grew up. Maybe it's social media. And before you know it, you're measuring yourself against numbers and expectations you never consciously chose. And that's where I think the problem starts. And when you look at it, let's face it, money is the easiest example. There was a time when whatever amount of money you're making right now probably sounded like a lot of money. But then you get there, right? And suddenly, it's not quite enough, is it? Not quite as much as you thought it was. There's a number out ahead of you that's even further ahead. Or maybe you meet somebody who makes more than you. Or maybe somebody has a bigger company than you. Or they own more property than you. They've got a better truck, a bigger house, a vacation home, whatever it is. And it's not wrong to want those things. But if you're a religious person or you've read the Bible at all, you know that that's one of the 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's belongings. You shouldn't covet what somebody else has. You shouldn't covet their belongings, their money, or the life that they have, because your life is just as important as theirs. I'm not against ambition. Believe me, I'm the most ambitious person that I know, which probably means I just don't know a lot of people. And I'm not against making money either. Lord knows there's probably never going to be enough of that to go around for everybody. So I'll just do the best I can while I can. And you wonder if I'm against building something? Come on now. I'm certainly not against that. And the problem is when comparison becomes the scoreboard, right? There's always somebody with more. You'll never measure up. So maybe there's a difference between ambition and comparison. Because ambition has a destination. Comparison, you never reach it. And I think that's where it gets interesting. Maybe the worst possible outcome isn't failing. Maybe sometimes it's succeeding at the wrong thing. And think about that for a minute. Maybe the worst possible outcome is succeeding at the wrong thing. And when can success be bad? I don't think we ever really think about that too much when we're living life the way that we are. But think about it. You could spend your whole life becoming incredibly good at something that ultimately wasn't that important to you. Keeping up with the Joneses, always trying to measure up. You can win financially and lose your family. How many times have you heard that story? You can build an enormous business and never actually enjoy the life it was supposed to provide. You just work yourself to the bone. You can become very important to people who barely know you and almost irrelevant to people who know you the best. Or you can accumulate everything you thought meant success, and then you realize that you were playing somebody else's game. And that's a scary thought, because failure usually gives you warning signs. Success can fool you for a long time. And it makes you wonder, what's that real scoreboard look like? It's not out there. It's not somebody else telling you what it is. It's something that you got to look inside to find. It's your scoreboard. Maybe some of those most important things in life are almost impossible to measure. Did you keep your word? Were you somebody people could count on? Were you there when it mattered? All these questions you can ask yourself. You can figure out what your scoreboard is. Do your kids want to spend time with you? Grandkids know you at all? You actually enjoy the people you're working so hard to provide for? And how many times you feel like you've been taken for granted or you're just not appreciated? Because you know what? Those people, they don't care. You might be building something useful in your mind, but in theirs, it's just another building. Or maybe you didn't help anybody along the way. You just stayed in your bubble, never walked out or never reached out a hand to help somebody else. Do you leave that little corner of the world better than you found it? Do you ever laugh or have adventures or create stories worth telling? And that's the scoreboards that we're talking about here. It doesn't matter what you have when it comes to material items. It's what's inside. Do you love people well? Those things don't come up with a quarterly report. They don't show in some sort of statement that you can look at and say, yep, I'm doing it right. And in today's land of participation trophies, you don't get one for just showing up. There isn't an app to show your ranking amongst your peers. But let's face it, those immeasurables, those intangibles, are what might actually matter most. Because your name is part of the scoreboard, right? We've talked about this multiple times this season. What are you putting your name on? What's yours? What's going to be tied to you for eternity? And I think your name becomes its own kind of scoreboard to some extent. When somebody says, he told me he'd take care of it, what does that other person think? They know you're going to get it done? They know you're going to take care of it like you said you would? Or do they relax because they know it's handled? Or do they start worrying because they don't know you that well? If your company builds something, what does that name mean? When my company builds something, what does that name mean? And it's not for me to answer. It's that reputation that's out there. It's that word of mouth. When my kids describe me someday, I don't necessarily worry so much about what they say because I've heard what they say, not from them, but from other people. But what do your kids say about you to other people? How do they describe you? Are you somebody that was there for them when they were growing up, when they didn't know that they needed you? Or maybe somebody talks about you when you're not in the room. And what reputation follows your name? I've said it before. You get the side of me, the version of me that you deserve. So if my reputation with you is somebody who's not very nice, I would caution that statement by saying, what version of me did you set yourself up to deserve and receive? But that's a scoreboard too. It might not be your scoreboard, but it's somebody's scoreboard. You don't get to see it all the time, but everybody around you probably does. And the thing with the scoreboard is that it changes with age. And you know what we consider winning changes with age. At 20, winning might have just been getting to college, having that freedom to do whatever you wanted to do, having a little bit of spending money, getting out on your own, not having to answer to your parents. I'm free. I can do whatever the heck I want to do when I want to do it. And there's some truth to that. And as I get older myself, I see it in my kids, but some of them are coming up on 30, and maybe their version of that scoreboard is changing. And I can see it a little bit, but 30s are more about careers and families, right? Raising the little ones, making your own way, and maybe 40s about something that gets built just a little bit bigger. And the 50s are your prime, right? I think the 50s are your prime. I think I'm coming into my prime, and I think that this is the time of my life, my golden years, not necessarily retirement years, but the prime of my working years is probably my 50s. I know as much as I probably need to know to be successful. I can always learn more. But this is when all of those years before start adding up, and you're keeping score in a way that measures your own personal growth. Because now I'm making more, I'm creating security, and there's somewhere along the way that other categories started showing up. In my 50s, I realized it's time, it's health, it's relationships. So those experiences as my kids are getting older. My parents are getting older. My dad is what I got left. I lost my mom a while ago, but it's my grandkids, and I start understanding kind of how they saw it. And you start realizing that the number of summers left isn't infinite. I'm 51 years old. I'm 51. What's the life expectancy of a white male in the United States right now? If I'm 51, maybe 75, 80, if I'm lucky. 29 years left on the long end. And it hits you, right? Because suddenly that time starts becoming one of the most valuable things on that scoreboard. How much time is left? How many timeouts do you have left? Not because work or money stop mattering, but because you finally understand what they were supposed to buy you in the first place. Back up. That scoreboard we were talking about. Remember, it's not what everybody else has. It's not that materialistic crap. At the end of the day, what we want to buy the most is just a little more time. And there's different ways you can purchase it. What are your deposits that you're making into the bank? Are you putting in the work? Are you putting in the effort? Because I don't want to turn this into one of those speeches where the conclusion is money doesn't matter, only family matters. Yeah, we've heard that. Whatever. It's too easy. Money matters, man. Money matters. Yeah. Your work matters. Providing for people matters. Your achievements matter. Building something matters. And yes, family matters. But along with all that, you matter. Your health matters. Your faith, your adventurous spirit, that all matters. And the contributions that you make to the world matter, regardless of what size they are. And I think the mistake is letting one category become the entire scoreboard. And it's a trap, right? You get so bogged down in today and what's going on today. How can I make more? How can I do more? How can I do this, that, or the other thing more? And that could be a score that you're winning 100-0 in your business or your personal life. But you're losing everywhere else. Compared to your neighbors, you could be winning 100-0 with your toys that you've got and your cars that you got and everything else that you got and the land that you got, but you're losing everywhere else. So maybe that goal isn't to dominate one category. And maybe it's just to build a life where all the things you claim are important actually show up somewhere on the board. Because that's a big board, isn't it? And there's a question that really tests it. And I want you to think about this. If nobody could see your life, would you still want the life you're building? Would you still want the life you're building? And that's a prophetic question right there. It's deep. Because not everybody can answer that question with a wholehearted yes. But if you think about it, you take away the Instagram, the Facebook, the social media, take away the likes and the follows. Take all that crap away. Take away your neighbors. If you're a boss, take away your employees knowing about what you own. Take away the people knowing how much money you make. And that's one of the things that I tell my kids and my family. Your finances is nobody else's business. Your finances is nobody else's business. But imagine if nobody saw the car or the truck you own or the house or the size of your company or the size of your bank account, or they don't know your title at work. With all of that stripped away, the life that you're living right now, would you still want it? The family you have right now, would you still build it? Would you still spend your time in the same way? Because what really matters, it's not this damn podcast. I'll tell you that for sure. You know, at the end of the day, this is for my legacy to my kids and my grandkids. Sure, it'd be fun to get more people to listen, but that's not what the scoreboard's about. Because whatever remains after you remove the audience is probably pretty close to what you actually value. My grandson knows Papa Bob from the podcast. He doesn't know King Roberto from the podcast, but he knows Papa Bob from the podcast, which is the entire point of the podcast, so that he can listen to Papa Bob and learn a little bit about him and who he was through technology. Because I've said it before on this podcast, one of my things that it sparked this entire path was the end of Avengers Endgame, when Tony Stark creates that hologram of himself talking to his family saying, if something goes wrong, you must be watching this. But you think about that. Eventually, you figure out what your real scoreboard is. Because most of the scoreboards everybody can see disappear anyways. When you're gone, when we leave this world, the bank account gets divided up. Somebody else owns the house, the trucks, the cars, the company, the land, the horses. The things that felt like permanent proof that you were winning turn out to be temporary. But what stays with people is that stuff that's harder to measure, because the ones who you help along the way, they don't forget you. The stories that people tell about you are remembered. Things you teach somebody, they don't forget that stuff. The traditions that continue, that started with you, or that maybe you carried on from your family before. The reputation attached to your name. Things you build that continue working after you're gone. The memories people have of being around you. Maybe that's why the most important scoreboard really is the one that nobody sees. Because it's easy to get lost in that competition, right? got to have a little bit more. I've got to be a little bit better. A little better here, a little more there. And there's nothing wrong with keeping score. It's a measuring stick at times, right? You look at others and peers around you and you see what they're doing or what they've achieved, and you measure yourself against that success. That's not keeping score. That's simply measuring growth against others who are in similar situations or life paths. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to win. Hell, that drive is what keeps some of us going. That desire to win. Because I like winning. Lord knows I like winning. And I like building. And I like achieving things. But every once in a while, you probably need to look up and ask the question, am I winning a game that I actually wanted to play? Because that matters. And sometimes that's just part of the grind, right? You may be playing a game that you don't necessarily want to play, but you need to win for the success of whatever it is. Your team, your company, others around you. You still have to win. But maybe it's just a scoreboard that you're no longer watching or that you don't really care about as much. Yeah, winning matters. Yeah, that scoreboard matters. But it's not your driving force. Because when the answer is no, when the game that you actually wanted to play and you're winning is not one that you actually want to play, you got to ask yourself, what scoreboard or whose scoreboard have I been using? Royal decree. Keep score, but make damn sure you're playing your own game. King Roberto coming to you from the King's Lair. Appreciate you spending time with me, and I'll see you or talk to you next week.